stay tuned because for the next 60 minutes, Motorsports Unlimited is on the air. Hi, I'm Jerry Bryant, and these are the lovely ladies of motorsports. And all this hour, we're going to have 60 minutes of action-packed excitement. All kinds of exciting things will happen. And we got the famous Bill Wildt, and we got all kinds of other good stuff that's happening all this hour. Motorsports Unlimited, 60 minutes of non-stop action. So let's go to the studio right now.
Thanks, Jerry, and hi, everybody. Welcome to the studio headquarters of Chicagoland's most watched, most talked about Access television series. I'm May Chin, and this is the 1087th edition of Motorsports Unlimited. If you'll recall, last week we started showing you how to weld using footage we shot some 20 years ago. Bill had the same reaction watching the footage as he had then. We can't teach this stuff properly if people can't see the flame. Fortunately, he realized that back then and shot a second program covering much of the same ground. But he found a way to show you the flame. Let's join him 20 years ago and see if this helps.
Today's program is, I guess we could call this part 2. Christine, what do you think? Part 2? Okay, this is part 2 of the welding program, which I intended to do. Now, do you remember what I said we were going to do? And you got to take the mic. What were we going to do?
Well, we were going to finish up the oxyacetylene, and then we were going to do stick.
No, that's not what I mean. On the welding show that we did, I was going to cover oxyacetylene welding, stick welding, TIG welding, and MIG welding, right?
Right.
And how much did we get done?
Halfway through.
Oxyacetylene.
Right.
Right, okay. But apparently, because I can't do this real rapidly. But Angie, the question I have for you is, do you know how to weld now?
I have an idea of how to oxyacetylene weld, but I don't know all the different forms yet.
All right, one thing we want to do for our audience. You know absolutely nothing about welding, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Were you surprised by anything that we showed you here last week? And we should remind our audience that what we did was we went through the beginning of oxyacetylene welding, and we actually had the girls to the point where the girls were puddling the material a little bit. Was there anything that surprised you that the process worked differently than maybe you might have thought it did? Or?
Well, it just seems more larger than life when you see it on TV because you see all the sparks flying and huge sheets of metal. Not really. Okay, because I often, when I talk to people about this, because perhaps sometime down the line we'll also do a program on machining, we'll do milling machine and lathe and things like that, and people sometimes see all this equipment and they get intimidated by it because of the size of the machinery, and yet when you get into things like machining, really I don't want to say the only important thing is, that's talking like a kid, but the most important thing when you're dealing with machining materials is the tip of the cutting tool, what's actually doing the cutting, and the material itself right at that contact point. So even though the machine might be the size of a house, the important part is what's happening at the cutting tool, and the rest of it just either turns the material or turns the cutting tool and gives you accurate adjustments for taking material off, but really all of the action is, it's the same thing with the welding. Despite all the machinery and the tanks and the hoses and the torches and all that you really have to know about, other than a few things, is what's happening right in that welding puddle, because that's where the welding occurs. Did that become obvious to you at all? Yeah.
Okay. One other thing, too, before we go any further, your video was a big hit.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you. You did an excellent job editing it.
No. You did a terrific job. And as a matter of fact, it was such a big hit. I said, we've got some material there that we didn't use. And a little bit later on in the program, we'll put in a mini Angie video.
Part 2, it never ends.
Well, the fact of the matter was that we had like an introductory piece that we did, a little interview piece that I did with you that was supposed to precede that interview, and we didn't have enough room for it in the last show. This show, for sure, we're going to make sure that we have room for that, and then we'll put in a little bit of a mini Angie video.
And you're going to put my little blooper in there from one of the shows.
That's right. Well, it wasn't really a blooper. I mean, it was, I want to show the people the commitment you have to this program, you know.
Angie, people actually, after they watched that show, they actually called us, what did Angie do? What did she do?
Well, folks, tonight you find out.
Okay. And what we're talking about, I should say, is that... because we're going to get confused with the thing that we're talking about, the video, or I guess we call it a blooper if you want. The blooper you did was when we did the Son of Spartacus car.
Right.
And we had a great piece of footage of you. We always promised we were going to put it in. Well, we're going to put it in tonight. Now, let's get back to the welding a little bit. What you guys did last week is I showed you how to open the tanks, right? And if you let me slip by there, and we're going to, as I explained to our audience last week, we've got a real cramped quarters to work in here. So I hope they bear with us. As we move these things around, we'll do it as comfortably and conveniently as we can. But again, we're going to open the oxygen. All right, we're going to open the acetylene. Now, do you guys remember anything about what I mentioned as to what we're going to set the pressures at and all that? Do you guys remember that at all?
Did you say something about setting it a few pounds higher than you normally would?
Well, but what would I normally set it at?
I don't know, Bill. Tell me.
Wasn't it according to what the number was on the tip?
That's correct. As a matter of fact, Angie, why don't you give Christine the microphone, and if you bring all the other tips over there that we've got over there.
And then you added a little bit more because of the length of the hoses. And
That's correct. That's correct. And I don't know if that was clear last week when we did this, but these are welding tips. Chuck, can you get any kind of a shot of these? These are a variety of tips for a welding torch, and I should probably show the welding torch at the same time. Angie, maybe you can hold this up. And what these do is this one that's in here unscrews like that, and each one of them has a number. This one happens to be a number 3. See if I can get lucky and find a number 4.
the last one, of course.
Well, I'm going to this. Yeah, this is a 4. This is a number 4. We'll put a number 4 in. All right. And one of the things that we tried to explain last week is that, and it's I often teach folks how to weld, and one of the most common mistakes that people that are sort of self-taught at welding, and I also explained there's nothing wrong with that. I've seen a lot of fine work done with people that teach themselves how to weld. But one of the most common mistakes is they never become conscious of the fact that the numbers on the tips are a guideline for what to set the pressures at, the gas pressures. One of the most common mistakes is you find people with, say, a 4 or a 5 tip trying to weld with 15 or 20 pounds of pressure.
Wow.
The problem is you can control it a bit with these valves here, but these are not regulators. They just let a little bit of gas bleed out. They're not regulators, and if you overpower them like that, you really can't get a good controlled flame.
Is that what happens? I mean, when, like you were saying, some people try to weld it with 15 pounds of pressure. What happens to the weld, or what you're trying to do when it's that high?
What you will is what you want in order to do a nice welding bead. You really need a nice stable flame, a continuous temperature flame, and if the pressure is varying, it's going to be really changing. Even if you really can't see it, it's going to be really changing the temperature of the flame as you move along. It's very difficult. Oftentimes, well, when I get into that, remind me, because when we get into actually doing a little puddling, oftentimes people, including myself, will fudge a little bit. I don't feel like changing the tip. I don't quite have enough heat. Instead of going to a bigger tip, I'll add a little oxygen and add a little...
Okay.
And you can get a little hotter flame, but you start getting an oxidizing flame. You blow holes through easier. You just have to be
right,
real
and you should have did it right the first time.
And you should have did it right the first place. Okay, so and you remember I also told you this had to be set at running pressure, right? Okay, so I'm going to take and crack the oxygen valve open. Now these numbers are really not close together at all, so you have to kind of guess where this would be. And I also told you, because I've got a 25 feet of hose on here, that I add about a pound for every 10 feet of hose. So where this is a number 4 tip, I'll run, say, 6.5 pounds, something like that. Okay, that's the oxygen is set. Now I'll open up the acetylene. Okay, we went through all this last week, so I won't spend a lot of time talking about this. All right. Now, I'm going to talk about 2 other things here real quickly, and this is going to be safety. Angie, could you go over and get that safety cap, please? I'm already getting myself tangled up in my microphone cord. Okay, step right back in here.
It is a bit crowded in here, guys.
Yes, it really is. Let's see if I can untangle myself here. Okay. I want to talk about this, and as I've explained so many times on the show, I say it kind of facetiously that, you know, I hate safety. It's not really what I mean. What I mean is I just know, I tell this little story, there's going to be some knucklehead out there that wants to pass a law. I don't want to pass a law. We're all responsible for ourselves. What I want folks to do is I want folks to understand that there are some things that they ought to be knowledgeable about when they fool around with this stuff, because you can hurt yourself. These tanks, for example, an oxygen tank right now, this one has in it about 1,500 pounds of pressure. When you get it back from having it refilled, it might be up around 2,000 pounds of pressure. On a hot day and on a fresh, good refill and everything, it could be as high as 3,000 pounds of pressure in this tank. These are safety caps. If you'll notice, Chuck, can you come in here tight on this thread so we can show the audience that there is a screw thread on the top here? and I will hold this next to it. Maybe we can get that. There's a screw thread in there. And when the regulators are not on the tanks, when you're moving them around, these are supposed to be screwed on there, and it gives a good metal protective device over here.
Bill, you're saying that temperatures can affect the pressure inside the tank?
Oh, absolutely, sure. Oh, you bet. In fact, I could tell you a nice story about rocket car people that when they want to take and put more pressure in their liquid fuel rockets, they will take and deliberately leave the tanks in the sun to bring the pressures up a little bit.
Is the cap to protect it while you're moving it in case it gets shook up and so the top doesn't pop off?
Good question. No, that's not it. The problem is that these things are very heavy too, and generally they're on carts or something like this. And what I'm trying to caution people about, if you're going to get involved with welding, and I encourage people to do it, that's what this show is about. We want folks to know that this is something really anybody can do. You don't have to be well, I don't want to say anybody can do it. Yes, you have to practice, you have to know what you're doing and all that, but it's not brain surgery.
Right.
You can do it. What happens is if you should be moving these, and if it's, you've got a lot of pressure in there, say 2,000 pounds, something like that, and the tank should fall off the cart and break this regulator off. Now, some of my audience knows that I've had considerable experience with rockets and built the war bike, a liquid fuel rocket engine thing, so I have some knowledge of rockets. And if you'll notice, this tank, any of the welding tanks, are shaped sort of like a rocket nozzle here in the back. They taper down like this. I believe the principle is, it's a French name, de Laval principle. Probably saying it wrong, but it's a principle for like letting go of a balloon. That's the shape of a rocket nozzle back there too. Same thing here. This thing breaks off. This takes off like a missile. Now I want to make this point hard. I worked as some of our audience, probably the regular viewers knows that I worked, as I've mentioned before, for nearly 20 years at United Airlines, and we had opportunities to see films and things like that. And I once had an opportunity to see a film from the maintenance base, an accident that happened many years ago. A tank wasn't properly secured on the cart. The tank fell off the cart, broke this off. The cylinder went through an aircraft wing. There was a mechanic working on a scaffolding on the tail section of the aircraft, way up in the air in the tail section of the aircraft. Hit him, killed him, went through the tail section of the aircraft, and finally embedded itself in the wall. That's the kind of danger we're talking about. So
well, I'm glad I asked that question so people realize.
That's what I say. I really want to caution people. This is dangerous. So many times, and I'm a racer, and I've been as careless as everybody else, and as I've had as much bravado as anyone else has taken, tossed these things in the trunk because we're going to the races and we're in a hurry and we don't put the. I want you to know when you do that, boy, heads up. You break one of these things off and there's pressure in there, and you will be sorry. It could be very dangerous. Second safety thing, and then and please, I hope there's not some knucklehead out there that's going to pass a law. I really do. I just want people to be heads up on this. The second thing is, and it's something I don't have on here that I've given some thought to over the past year or two after someone mentioned it to me. It is a good idea to put check valves. There are little inexpensive check valves that you can put in here. They go between the hose connection and the torch itself. Little inexpensive check valves that go in there that prevent a back feed of gas. And when I first heard of it, I said, well, that doesn't sound possible. How could you have an explosion? Because the gases are separate. There's oxygen coming here and acetylene coming here till it comes out here mixed and lighted. And oxygen isn't going to burn, and certainly acetylene. How are you going to have an explosion? Well, what can happen is you can momentarily get the tip clogged. Perhaps you get too close to the weld and get a little bit of metal on the end of the tip, and then you can get oxygen backing up into the acetylene line. Oh. Then you can, because now the oxygen, the acetylene has oxygen to work with. Anyhow, it is a very rare thing. Doesn't happen very often. I've only heard of it. I've been welding now for, God, it's got to be more than 30 years now. At least
longer than you'd care to say.
Longer than I'd care to say, and I never heard of it happening until about a year or two ago, and I made inquiries. I couldn't understand how that could have happened. And then it was explained to me, and these little check valves are only, a couple of bucks a piece. So it's really not worth taking the chance. Anyhow.
Are they in there now, Bill?
No, they're not. but I am thinking about it. So no, I'm not the most responsible person in the world, as we both
noticed.
But I do think it ought to be in there. Okay. So anyhow, I just want to make that point. Now, I want to thank the folks at Christine helped me.
Their names were Brad and Bob at Midwest Welding Supply.
Welding Supply in Stone Park, because we struggled last week. Anybody that saw the show we did on last week, we struggled with the girls as to how we could have them see the welding process without getting stuff in your hair and putting goggles over your head. And we had you in goggles and all that. And
but it was cute.
It was cute, but it really wasn't what I wanted. So these guys came to our rescue and let us use some stuff. And Christine, let me have the microphone. We'll give it to Angie. If you would go over and get those two the eye protection for you guys. Yeah, don't trip, please. This is going to work better, you'll see. All right, now what we've done here for our audience is we've taken, now normally these are used for people that, for example, do inspection welding, where you're not going to actually be welding, so you just hold it up to see what the guy is doing and all that. And these guys made this up for me. They put, normally this is used for electric welding, arc welding, which takes a much darker shield, but you can't see gas welding with an electric welding shield because it's too dark, because, and we'll get into that a little bit too, the gas welding is a much, it's not as bright a flame, all right? So they put gas welding lenses in here so that we could see. I think it's number 5. They put number 5s in there, and we appreciate it very much. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually demonstrate a little bit about this puddling thing again, so that you girls can be refreshed. I'm going to have to presume, without explaining the whole thing again, because it'll take too long, as to how we arrive at puddling. But do you guys kind of remember?
I remember.
Okay, everybody remembers? All right. And by the way, that's the same piece that you guys were working on last week. What do we do first here?
I need them. The first thing you do is turn on the acetylene.
Right. Now we say turn on, we just mean crack it a little
crack
bit,
it
right?
open.
Okay. Now I'm going to do this fairly quickly because we don't want to leave the acetylene on too long without oxygen. Why?
Because it makes those little black things.
It makes a mess. The
Yes, it makes a mess.
Makes a mess. The unburned acetylene gets all over everybody
Right.
and all that. Okay, so
Right.
I'm going to just quickly just crack this thing, light it, and I'm going to add oxygen right away. Now, why when I add the oxygen don't we have those
Because
little
it's
black...
burning it off?
Exactly, because all the acetylene is burning then. We're not dealing with just with unburned acetylene, which is all that black stuff is. All right, I'm going to do one more thing, and you know, if we're going to do this right, we're going to take a cut shot of this afterwards so that we can see it just a little bit better. But I want to explain once again the process of adjusting the flame, because it's very important. All right, I'm going to turn, let me tell the audience what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn the oxygen off, and that's going to give us that nasty black stuff. But we have to live with it for a moment, because in order to show the audience what I'm going to do, what I'm going to be demonstrating is that you know the acetylene pressure is adjusted correctly when the end of the flame starts to feather. When it feathers, then you can go ahead and add oxygen. If that's not a big enough flame, a hot enough flame, after you're done doing this, then you should go to a bigger tip. You shouldn't try to force it by adding more oxygen, because you get an oxidizing flame and all that.
Oh, is that how you know when you have to go to a larger tip?
Right. If that's not hot, if you don't have enough heat for the thickness of material you're using, then you're going to have to go up to a larger tip.
And not increase your acetylene and oxygen.
Exactly, even though we've all fudged it a little bit, including me. All right, I'm going to take, and I'm going to pull this away from you guys a little bit, because I don't want to get that stuff all over you.
It's already floating around.
Okay, there's the acetylene. Now that's too much. We'll back it down a little bit. Right there. See how it's just feathering at the end?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we want. That's just about right. And now I'm going to add oxygen to it. And now you see the black smoke go away? Okay.
There it goes.
All right. Now, we are getting a sound from our tape recording machine telling us that we have to change tapes. So, folks, don't go away. We'll be right back.
I'm amazed at the story Bill told about the danger of not putting a safety cap on gas cylinders when moving them.
It really does sound dangerous, and I hope our viewers will be very careful if they're ever involved with gas cylinders.
I don't think I understood the warning about check valves.
I didn't either, but apparently it's something that's cheap, easy to install, and makes oxyacetylene welding safer.
We should explain to our audience that the reason Bill decided to begin doing some how-to shows is that welding, machining, fabricating, etc. are the skills necessary for the motorsport community to turn their ideas into reality.
He has often said that machine tools, welders, benders, and the like are to the motorsport community what brushes and paints are to the artist, or musical instruments are to musicians. These are the instruments our community uses to create, and he wants to encourage folks to learn these skills that will enable them to bring the fruits of their imagination to reality.
Now let's return to the shop and learn how to adjust a proper oxyacetylene welding flame.
All right, we're back now, and what I was just about to describe to the audience, and again, we're going to try to remember to put a little better shot of this. We're going to use a dark lens over the camera so you can see it a little bit better. But it's important that you recognize that in order to adjust the torch correctly, there are essentially 3, Chris, am I making this clear? You guys want to hold these things up again so you can see it, and you can tell me if this makes any sense to you or not, okay? Go ahead and look at the flame. All right, girls, do you see the flame?
Yes, I see it.
Okay, now I'm going to add just a little more oxygen. Now, is it quite visible to you that there's like this one long feathered flame out here? It comes out to about here that you can visibly see. Is that visible to Angie? Mm-hmm. Okay, Chris?
Yes.
All right. Now, you also see that inside of it there's another, like a different color flame. Somebody want to describe that to me? Maybe a whiter flame?
Yes, brighter.
About that long?
Yes.
Okay. Now, there's also one right down in here. Look real close. Can you guys see that?
It's real tiny.
See, it's real tiny in there. You see, I call these cones just because they're sort of cone-shaped.
It's very, very small.
Angie, do you see that?
Yeah, very, very.
Very faintly. Okay, now I'm going to start adding oxygen, and it will become a little bit more visible as I do. All right, now is that clearer? You see the cone in here?
Yes.
And then this one out to here?
Yes.
And then this one out to here?
Yes.
Now I'm going to add more oxygen. Now the torch is adjusted correctly when we pull that, the middle one if you want to call it, the middle cone, just pull that right inside the tiniest one. See it?
Wow, yeah.
Okay, so we end up with 2 cones then, this outside feathered business and the little tight one inside.
So what you're trying to do then is get rid of that middle one.
Exactly, you want to pull it just inside the other one, all right? Okay. Now, then I'm going to go and I'm going to begin the feathering process. Now, this is a little bit difficult for me because normally I like to brace my arm against something, and I think everybody will kill me if I get this white coat dirty. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. And what we do...
Is that an excuse if it doesn't work out?
Yeah, right. What we do is we hold this down. Now, you girls see it? Now, you see it starting to turn cherry red?
Yes.
Now, do you see the water droplet in there? Can you see that? Mm-hmm. You see the water droplet? Now, see,
yeah.
It looks like I'm moving it along with the torch, right?
Yes.
But what's really happening is I'm melting more and moving it along, right?
Right.
Okay, and that's called puddling. Correct?
Right.
All right, now, Christine, you asked me an excellent question last week when you said, well, don't you use filler rod, Bill, right?
Right.
Okay, let me have the microphone. Would you go and get me, I think we've got filler rod over there. Would you get me a piece of filler rod, please? Just be careful. Now, when you practice welding, when you learn how to weld, the first thing you have to learn is have to learn how to puddle, which is what we're doing right there. But if you look at that, what we've just done, now can you see that that's actually kind of sunk in now, right? Mm-hmm. All right, do you have any idea why?
Why it's sunken in there?
Yeah.
No.
All right, because we've actually burned up some of the steel.
Oh.
We brought it to a molten state, so there's not as much there as there was. So
right.
One of the things you have to do when you weld is you have to add filler rod in order to take and replace some of the material you're taking out, and as I explained last week, also to add some additional material to it. So the weld should act up. There's an old chestnut that goes around. I always call it an old myth, that the weld should be the strongest part, and in theory that's correct. That means under ideal circumstances, if you were able to get all around the part when you're welding it, and there weren't other problems that you had to consider, that the reason it's going to be stronger is because the weld would actually be a thicker area because of the filler rod that you had. Okay, I mean, there's no magic as to why the weld would be stronger. The problem is, in real life, very often you can't get all the way around the part. So you have to try to do a good job on the part of the weld that you can get at. All right, now I'm going to this filler rod then, and again, I hope we can take and get the shots. Hopefully we'll be more successful this week at getting some of these shots. Now to add the filler rod, after we form that puddle. After we form the puddle, you take the filler rod and just advance it or dab it into the leading edge of the puddle. And there's sort of a capillary action that will pull that into the puddle, and then you move on. And I'll show you what I mean. You see the wet puddle developing there? All right, so we take and all right. Now, Angie, did you see what I did there at all?
You added the filler to kind of fill in the space that you welded away there.
And you just kind of put it into that little water drop.
Right.
You sort of stick the rod in there. And can you see now that the weld is higher
Right.
See here where it was lower and now it's higher? That's because of the additional filler rod that we added to the thing. All right, but before you get to that part of the technique, and I'm not going to try, as I've said before, this is not going to be to try to help people become instant welders out of watching a TV show. I don't mean to suggest that. What we're trying to do here is to show people that really anybody can do this if they apply themselves and they want to learn, they want to know how to do it, that there's no magic involved. I also want to say that the longer a person has been welding, the better welder that they are, because a lot of this has to do with practice and learning. Now, does this seem, patience, does this seem relatively simple at this point?
Right, yeah.
Okay, nothing complicated. Now, before we go any farther, Angie, if I could hold on to the microphone here or give it back to Christine, would you get that piece of paper? We've got an announcement to make.
Yeah, the process does seem like it's simple enough to understand. It's just a matter of practicing.
Yeah. Well, it's a matter of and I'll tell you why. Because this, again, let me restate this for. And Angie, maybe you can get one of those practice pieces of steel over there. You have to know what to practice, and all we're trying to do is show folks what to practice.
Right, the wrong things and the right things to do.
Right, and then anybody can do this. If you were in a welding class, in a welding school or something like that, after you had learned that puddling technique, you would spend literally hours going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, just moving that puddle. And you're trying to learn a couple of things. You're trying to learn how to maintain about the same width on the puddle, like we'll probably have about 1/4 of an inch wide there. You're trying to learn how to maintain that 1/4 inch, because if you move along too...
burn through it, right?
That's the second part. If you move too quickly with the torch, there's not enough heat in the puddle, and the puddle narrows up very quickly, all right? And if you linger too long, you blow a hole right through it. So it's a matter of learning that technique.
Yeah.
And after you get done, and you get pretty good at this process of puddling, after you get done, you've learned that fairly well. Then the next thing that you have to learn is adding the filler rod. And that's just a matter of learning the coordination of putting the filler rod in there and all that. And then what they'll have you do is weld up a pad, they call it. In other words, you'll take and go back and forth, just weld bead, and then you go back and forth this way, and then back and forth, and just keep building it thicker and thicker and thicker. And the idea is to learn the coordination between the two hands of the filler rod and the torch itself.
Which would seem to me it wouldn't be easy to do,
well,
to make it smooth.
That's why I say the longer a person's been a welder, the greater success they're going to have. So that's, I wanted to point that out, and then we're going to have you guys do this process a little bit. But Christine, you know about this announcement, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. One of the girls on our program that's been on several shows with us. As a matter of fact, the husband has been too. Sure. We're talking about Laura Bach and her husband Gary Bach. As a matter of fact, perhaps our audience will remember that Gary Bach had that beautiful supercharged GMC 671 supercharged Corvette, that black Corvette we had on the show a couple months ago, something
Our
like that.
audience also might remember that Laura's the one that didn't like the ultralight after she flew in it.
That's right, that's right. She was the one that didn't like it, okay, and her husband has 2 ultralights, so, okay, along with his Corvette. In any event, Laura has not been on the show for a while, and the last show that she was in was that one in Libertyville, where she wouldn't get out of the car because she was concerned about how she looked, and she looked great, and she still wouldn't get out of the car. Well, and we kind of teased her then because she was with child.
We didn't, you did.
Okay, I did. I'm guilty. That's true, I did it. In any event, they had the baby. Laura had her baby.
Please remember, this material was shot some 20 years ago.
6 pounds, 6 ounces, and the name was Cody Tyler Charles Bach, right? Well, I want to, obviously, congratulations. And apparently everything is okay, everything is fine, and she's looking forward to coming back on the show. And
Gary said she's going to be ready to come back about June.
About June. Well, we'll certainly be looking forward to that, and congratulations. We're real pleased for you. Now, are you guys ready to puddle a little bit? You guys are ready?
Sure.
Okay, I'll move this out of the way. Now, I'm going to let Angie start this thing. Now, this, again, with the guys from Midwest Welding, try these instead of the goggles, see if this works for you. Do you want me to light the torch for you?
Sure.
Or do you want to do it?
Oh, I'll try it.
Okay. Take the torch in your hand, and let me get around to the other side, and I will take you through it step by step. Okay?
Okay, and where do you hold it? Down here? Or
Yeah, you hold it up there. To start it, of course, this thing you just push to the side. No, you've got to open the gas first.
Okay.
Here, I'll do Mike for you, Angie.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Now, first you want to crack the acetylene a little bit. Cracking it means just opening it a little bit. After it breaks, see, no, that's too much. The thing will really pop if you do. Just
Like
just
that?
a little. Yeah, just so you can just barely hear it. Okay.
I can't hear it.
Good, right there. Okay. Now put the striker in front of it.
This scares me every time.
Okay, and just
Go
strike
ahead
it.
and just strike it.
Wait a minute. Okay, so I'm not left-handed.
There you go.
Very good.
Okay, now more acetylene till it feathers. A little too much. Good, just like that. That's good. Maybe a little bit too much still. Good, like that. Now add oxygen.
Little or a lot?
Well, just a little bit at first.
Which way? Whoops.
Yeah, okay, just a little bit.
Okay.
Go ahead, a little more. A little more. All right, now turn the torch a little bit this way so that you can see those cones that we were talking about, and keep adding oxygen now.
Until it gets to the bottom?
Until you get that one cone there. Just go inside the other one, all right? Okay, now what you want to do is I want you to go down onto that same piece of steel.
This one here?
That's right.
Okay.
That's correct. Now, what you want to do is have the tip of that cone. I said last week in the show several times when I was watching, I said to myself, okay, see you got the puddle, bring it up a little bit. You're right into the puddle, okay? That's it, and then move it along to your left, too fast. You want to keep that puddle watch for the wetness. There it is. Now don't move too fast. Just move it along a little bit, and you want to keep that tip fairly close to that puddle. That's good. That's the idea. Oh, now what did you do?
Mistake number one, we burned through it.
Okay, you burned through it, but that's all right. Believe me, when you first start learning how to do this, you do that a lot. Now again, you want the tip of that cone just not really touching the metal, just above it, but you want to maintain that height all the time.
I'm having trouble seeing it.
All right, probably because of the way you're holding it. Turn it like this a little bit. Can you see it better that way now? Is that better?
Yeah, a little bit, but I keep seeing that. Oh, there we go.
See the wetness? There you go. No, you're not. It's not wet. Apparently, are you not able to see it?
I'm having trouble.
Okay. There it is.
There we go.
Okay, you saw the puddle that time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That puddle is the only thing you have to worry about. That's the molten part. Okay. Now, why don't you just hold it up now, like this. I want to say a couple things here first. There are several ways of controlling the heat of that puddle. All right. The height that you hold the torch away from here. Mm-hmm. If it looks like the thing is going to starting to burn through and get away from you, you can just pull the torch up a little bit. Uh-huh. The angle that you hold the torch at, if you've got it straight up and down, obviously you've got the most heat going right into the metal. If you tilt it this way, a lot of the heat is glancing off and going away from it. You follow that?
Right.
So that's another way of controlling it. The angle here, in addition to the right size tip and all the rest of the stuff, you can get up and down and like that. And when you start adding filler metal, you'd be amazed at once you get good at it, you'd be amazed at the technique, how you can play with it. You can have much too hot of a flame and a puddle that's getting away from you, and you can feed that filler metal in there very quickly, and that cools the puddle down because it's like throwing cold water into the puddle.
Yeah,
because
you have to know what you're doing to be able to fix that problem.
It's just practice. It really is. It's just practice. It's the way you control this, and it's also part of the way you weld when you weld. Well, I'll explain that in a little bit. In any event, Christine, I'd like you to step in now. Maybe you can change places with Angie. Angie, you can give her your glasses, and Chris, you can give her the mask.
Okay.
Okay. Now we've got the torch already adjusted and everything.
Right.
All right.
Angie did a great job doing that.
Thank you.
All right, now what?
Okay, why don't you go out here where we don't have anything done yet, all right? Now, move the torch to where the tip of that inner cone, that tiniest one, is just above there, all right?
Boy, it's real hard to see. I know what she means.
Look right into the middle of that glowing part. See it there? See the water puddle now?
Yeah.
I say water. It's molten metal right there.
Right.
See? That's
Uh-oh.
So you want to move along. Once you get it about a 1/4 inch wide, then just move along to the left. Not that fast. Just a little. Keep going. So you can hold the width of that puddle by the speed that you move the torch.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Get the idea? And you'll find it a little bit easier if you take and angle this so that you're sort of preheating the metal as you are approaching it. All right?
Oh, not straight up and down.
Exactly, in the direction you're going. You're a little too close to the.
Whoops.
Yeah. See, you're a little too close to the steel.
Number 2. Boy, that's not easy to do.
No, that's what I'm saying. Part of the reason we do these shows, we want to show folks how to do it and show them it's not impossible. But I also want people to develop a little respect for those that do this sort of thing. That this is a considerable degree of skill involved. Oh, you're too close there.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's
See?
hard for me to see when I'm getting down to the metal
Okay.
with the glasses on. And then when I get, I know I'm at the metal, it's too late because I made a hole in there.
Okay. Now let's hold it up again.
Okay. But I see what you're saying about how, you know, it's really tricky to get it just right. So that you're not burning a hole and you're too far away from the metal, or, you know?
But it will become like second nature after a while.
Right. A long while, right?
All right, before we go any further on this thing, what we're going to do now, and by the way, I'll tell the folks that the proper way to turn this thing off is, otherwise you get a big pop. The first thing you do is turn off the oxygen, and then quickly, so you don't have all that black stuff turning you suddenly
Oxygen
off.
first?
Oxygen first, otherwise the thing pops pretty hard. Tell you what we've got to do now. I think the audience has listened to us long enough, right?
We told you last week that we're really, you know, they're just enchanted.
You're really enchanted by this, right? Yeah, okay. You know, the abuse that I have to take on this show is absolutely unbelievable sometimes. No, I think it's time we'll show that little, the mini Angie video that we were talking about.
I've never heard of a mini video before.
This is a mini Angie video, okay? Because, like I said, the other one was, there was a lot of people that were very enthused about it. So this is some stuff we didn't use, and it's a lot shorter, but a cute little thing, and it'll give us an opportunity to use the interview piece that we put together for this. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
To us it does. You'll see.
All right, now, I want to make sure, though, that the audience comes right back afterwards. So we'll have more good stuff. This is really
Are
fascinating,
you
right?
sure you want to put it in now?
Yeah, let me see now. We've got,
Okay.
now we have to put it in now.
Okay.
Don't go away, folks. You're going to enjoy this this piece with Angie K. And
Come back afterwards.
And come back afterwards.
What's an Angie K video, Chris?
Bill likes our audience to get to know the people involved with Motorsports Unlimited. As he has an opportunity, he creates video essays. This one's about Angie K.
Let's watch.
One of the real pleasures in doing Motorsports Unlimited, at least for me, and I'm sure my audience can appreciate this, is the friendships we've developed with some of the fine young women that have worked on our program over the past 3 years. Most of our audience probably knows by now that we've had the pleasure of working with more than 90 different girls. Angie, you've been working with us for quite a while now, and what we try to do, if I remember, and if we can work it in, is that we try to do a little one-on-one interview with the girls after we've worked with them for some time, and we'd like the audience to get to know them a little bit better. Now, we recently renamed you, and I shouldn't say we, like we dictated it, because we didn't do that, but it's Angie Katrotsios, right?
Right.
Right, which I can't say, but that's not a test for a name, because I can't say any of them, as everyone is aware. But that's a pretty tough name to say.
Yes, it is, and it's a very long name. And when it was printed up on the screen during the girls' goodbyes,
We had no room for you.
we had no room for me, and people were looking at my name going, what on earth? So we shortened it to K.
Okay, now it was my idea to have the K be K-A-Y.
Right.
But you wanted it just the K.
Right. That way people wouldn't be, friends of mine wouldn't ask me if it was legally changed to K-A-Y, and it just seemed easier.
Okay, anyhow, that's your showbiz name, right?
Right.
Okay, talking about show business, what are your goals? What are you trying to, first of all, let me ask you this. I know that you work a regular job. What do you do for a living?
I work for an insurance firm, and I do secretarial work for the firm I work for. That's basically my 9-to-5 job, because a showbiz career, you really need something else to fall back on, because it's very difficult to break into. Someday I would really like to write, direct, and act in films and for television, but that's a long ways away, and there's a lot of steps to take to get there. So.
And as I've told you, right now we need you in front of the camera, not behind the camera.
Exactly.
No, and in fact, our audience should know that. Angie very definitely would like to take and get some experience behind the camera, right?
Right.
And the other aspects of television production, including producing and directing and all. But for right now, and I guess, like I say, this is a little hard for me to even imagine. How old are you, Angie?
19.
Yeah, at 19 years old, I think we can still use you in front of the camera.
I think so.
Although, as we get an opportunity to do so, we're certainly going to get you some experience with some of the television production end of the thing. Because I know that many people ask us, how we get the girls to work on these shows and everything. And part of it is to get opportunity for exposure, of course, and to learn television production and to hone their skills in front of the camera. But if they have anything else that they'd like to do too, we're more than happy to, provide them with an opportunity to do that. What would you like to do professionally outside of the regular job? Now, you've been with us long enough to know that I want all the people we interview, I want them to dream big. I understand that you do secretarial work, and I understand you have a good job with an insurance firm and all that. But I want you to put that aside for a moment, because I think your vision in your mind is some kind of show business career, at least for a while. Tell us a little bit about where you'd like to go. And I know ultimately you're talking about directing and production and all that, but let's say for the next 10 years.
For the next 10 years? Well, I think a good way to start for me would be to get some experience, to take the classes in my local cable area, to learn how to use the equipment. And I'd really like to put together some projects, not necessarily a weekly show, but some sort of project, either a comedy. I haven't really decided what I'd like to write, but I'd like to work on a project and take some time filming it and get a couple of those on the air, on Access, in the next 5-10 years. And that will kind of serve as a resume to show to agents out on the West Coast, because I'd really like to go out to California someday.
I see. And as you know, we don't give the girls a lot of time to be doing a bunch of other stuff. We shoot a lot.
Yes, we do.
We really do. All right, now we shot a piece with you that we do a lot of things on Motorsports Unlimited to attract an audience, as you well know. And as I tell all the girls that work on our program, the girls are the stars of this show. There's no question about it. You're the people that attract an audience for us, and hopefully when we have them and they come to look at the girls, that maybe they hear a little bit about what we say too. We hope so. And for that reason, we do the music video pieces in there, which have helped, which we've gotten a lot of positive response on that, so that's worked out very well. And I think we all know there's a program on television called Star Search, right? And it has achieved some popularity, but they're kidding themselves if they think anybody's tuning in to watch the singers and dancers. Do you think I'm right?
I think so, judging by the response that the spokesmodels get, the loud cheering and all that.
Right, you bet. That's what people are tuning in for, is the spokesmodels. And so I started thinking about that, and I said, well, I'll tell you what. We've got all these fine young women that are aspiring models and actresses. We're going to do our own kind of a little Star Search piece here for the girls, and we put one together for you, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, the audience should know that you were intimately involved with the design of this piece, right? So, in other words, so I don't get all the bad letters.
Well, Bill, you filmed it, not me. I was just in it.
Okay, but you liked the piece. You enjoyed the work and everything?
Yes, I liked it. It was time-consuming, but that's part of being professional. And actually, I had fun putting it together. I got to do all sorts of neat things, stuff I'd never done before, using pom-poms.
Okay, now we're going to run that, but before we run that, we've got another piece to run about you. Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Would this happen to be the piece where I was attempting to open a door during the Son of Spartacus show?
That's right. I mean, we have just such a sensational outtake of you. Let me set this up for the audience so they know what they're looking at. The idea here was we were in the Chicago Access Corporation studio, and the idea was to make a dramatic entrance for this newly completed Son of Spartacus drag racing T Roadster, which was capable of being started up and driven in. And the idea was to have you girls open these big 8-foot tall, 8-foot wide doors, and the guy was to drive this vehicle in. It's a racing vehicle with pipes. Okay, very dramatic entrance, right?
Very dramatic.
Okay. Before we tell our audience what happened, why don't we take and show them? Okay? You're going to get a kick out of this. Guys, if we can, go ahead and roll that tape. Angie, you were a figure skater for many years, and I have two comments about that. Number one, if anyone shouldn't have fallen, it shouldn't have been you, but I must say that it was a perfect figure skate kind of a move.
It was graceful. That's what I learned from figure skating. You do fall many times during skating, and it gets to be more graceful the more times you do it.
Well, let's say something else too, by the way, the reactions of those around. All of the girls are laughing.
Good.
And all the guys are real concerned. They were, are you okay? Isn't it interesting, the male-female reactions, something like that? And you were fine. You didn't get hurt.
I was fine.
We just went ahead and did it again and all that. Anyhow,
I got a good laugh out of it.
Yeah, and you were a good sport. You did laugh. Okay, now I'd like to run that, I guess for lack of a better name, we'll call it a Star Search piece, but I hate to, do you have another name for it? You want to be a writer? Think
it's a video, the Angie video.
Okay, this will be the Angie video, and this will tell the audience a little bit about you. So if we're ready in the control room, let's go ahead and roll that tape. Angie, I think that about tells the audience everything they want to know about NGK.
I think so.
Nice piece. Now we're going to do something a little bit later on. We had some, how would you say, some parameters that we had to work in there that weren't the best in the world, and I think we put together a nice piece. But I want to do something a little bit more dramatic, maybe with something other than our traditional light blue background in that. And I think we can do another piece. We'll do that a little while later down the line. Anyway, folks. I hope you enjoyed meeting Angie K. And both of her videos, if we can if we can call the other one a video. And now it's time to get back to whatever show that we've put this one into. And I'm not really sure where it's going to fit in. But in any event, I hope you enjoyed meeting Angie K.
We should explain that the dance fashion footage inserted in the preceding essay was an abbreviated piece. The one originally planned aired last week. Does that make any sense, Christy?
Yes, it's what Bill was talking about earlier in the show, a mini video.
Let's return to the shop.
We're back. Angie, even though that was a little mini video as far as the actual dance piece you did, I think it was very effective. You enjoyed doing those, didn't you?
Oh, I had a lot of fun. It took some time to do, but that's what video and filmmaking is about. It takes time to put out a quality product.
Yeah, it really does. And you've expressed an interest you'd like to do a few more.
Oh, I'd love to.
Okay, well, we're going to do that, as a matter of fact.
Once again, please remember, this material was shot 20 years ago.
A full hour to me.
Right, and when summertime comes around, we'll do some on the beach, so you can look forward to that.
Yeah, that'll be good. That'll be real good, as a matter of fact. All right, I want to explain a couple more things here very quickly. Maybe you can give Christine the microphone. And Angie, if you would, can you get that regulator over there? Another thing I noticed in last week's show that I didn't explain very well, and it's amazing, an hour show sounds like a long time, and it's just not, no, the regulator, right there, right? That's it, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
There's always so much more to it.
There really is. I explained last week that I recommend that people buy a dual diaphragm regulator, and I went through it. I won't explain it all again. But what I didn't do was explain what the alternative choice was, and that's a single diaphragm regulator, and that's what this is. And Angie, maybe you could hold that up next to the one on top of the oxygen there. It doesn't make a difference which one. And it'll give the folks, and Chuck, can you get a shot of those two together to give them a shot of the different size? I actually want to have you guys try to weld something, and I'm going to explain what the difficult part is now. And Angie, if I can put you to work one more time, you get another one of those pieces of practice steel. Okay, thank you. Now, it is relatively simple. What you guys have been doing is relatively simple, and it's really the way people practice when they start out and all that. All right? It gets more complicated when you try to put a couple pieces together. And this
Just for the record, though, it wasn't really relatively simple. No,
it really is relatively simple. What you need now is like hours of practice, which we don't have time for on a TV show. But once you get the idea of that's what you do, you actually puddle the metal and then add filler rod. Now the hard part when you put two pieces together is that you have to puddle both pieces. So half the puddle is on one piece and half is on the other piece.
Twice as hard.
So you want to go right along the crack here between them.
Exactly. If you were going to weld these pieces together, and obviously because this is very light metal, the stuff is going to tend to warp and everything. So you'd have to tack what we call tack it, make a little puddle, put a little dab of filler in here, move it down, straighten it out a little bit, put another dab in there, and all that. That's when it gets a little bit more difficult, because when you're going right down in here into the center of a piece of material, the heat tends to spread out and dissipate. When you go onto the edge, it melts much more quickly. So you have to be real heads up on it and be heads up and ready to stick that filler rod in to cool the puddle off as well as put material in there. It gets even more difficult if, for example, we were going to take and weld this to this. Yeah. The reason being is when we've got to get half the puddle on this piece going up, right? And half the puddle down here on this piece. And this piece takes a lot longer to heat because we're right in the middle of the piece. This goes very quickly. So the way you deal with that,
you have to angle that very carefully more towards the bottom.
Exactly. Almost completely onto the bottom like that. It would be almost totally going down to the bottom. And as you get that wet puddle on the bottom, as that starts to develop, you would turn it up a little bit to get it wet.
And put the filler in real quick.
And by the way, that's exactly correct. She's exactly correct.
I can teach a class on this now.
The point is that I hope I keep saying wet, And I think you have to have looked through the welding goggles to know what I'm talking about as far as, because it looks like you're getting a little water drop on the metal, and that's actually the steel is turned molten in that area. So that's when it gets more difficult, and what you will do there is, as I said, part of it is torch manipulation, being able, after you get the puddle going on the more difficult piece to get it going on, and then you angle it up, and this gets wet very quickly, and you're right, then you add the filler rod very quickly, first of all because you have to weld it, and second of all because you want to get control, especially the puddle, so you don't end up just burning it away. Does that make sense? All right.
Also, you know, the droplet looks a lot like a drop of mercury. That's what it reminds me of.
Is that right? Well, I can't say that I've ever seen a drop of mercury, so.
I mean, the way it squiggles.
All right, well, I want to complicate this even a little further. It gets even more complicated, for example, if this were 1/8 of an inch thick, and this is only a little thin piece like this. Now that's very difficult to get a puddle in, and this is extremely easy because we have to use a tip large enough to get this to puddle. That means we've really got to keep the heat away from here because it's much too large of a tip for this one. Those are the difficulties that welders face all the time, and it's a combination of torch manipulation, of adding filler rod, of the size of the tip that you select and all that.
So it's really quite a technique you have to get down.
It really, and it's practice. It really is. It's practice, and you're going to burn lots and lots of holes through before you learn the technique. But what I want to do is, because I would like to say that I actually got you guys to weld something, so what I would like to do is see if we can form a puddle there and at least get a little filler rod dabbed, and we'll do it right there. Christina, you going to do it first?
Sure.
All right, now to save time, I'll light this. All right, Christine. Now you're going to have to add filler rod.
I know.
Think you can do it?
No.
Well, give it a try anyway. And
Sure.
Maybe I can help you with the filler rod. Would that be cheating?
See, because this is kind of awkward. You don't know where to go with these.
All right, I'll help you
know.
just a little bit.
You're going to have to help me more than that.
Now you see the...
Well, let me kind of with you so I can
Okay.
feel what you're trying to do there.
Okay, we want to get both. Now, see, we got the torch pointed wrong there. It's getting too hot on the one side.
See, you know that.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
You did
That
it,
does
see?
happen fast.
Oh, yeah, especially on the edges like that. It's going to happen very, very quickly. Angie, did you see any of that? Were you
Yeah,
able to watch it at all?
I saw
Did
it.
you get an idea?
It looks difficult.
Okay, Christine, slide over. Let Angie take your place.
Need the glasses?
All right, take the torch. And we probably, by the way, I should say, we probably have now you see what you're doing? You see how the torch is pointed that way? You're going to put all kinds of heat into this one and not enough into this one. So you've got to really bring it up like this and then angle it like this, okay? Did you get them both? Get them both. Get the other one. Now get down here. No, you're going to the wrong place. Right there. Now bring it right down in. Oh.
Snap, crackle, pop.
Now, do you want to know what's causing that?
Yes.
Okay, that's one of the things too that, by the way, that many welders are always concerned about is why that's happening. You're getting the tip too close down into the material. The end of the tip gets so hot that the oxygen and acetylene explodes in the end of the tip. I say explodes because that's what's giving you that pop on the thing.
Yeah.
In any event, we did get the metal put together.
And we made a mess.
Yes, and you guys have both welded. So I think that's quite an
It's
achievement.
official now.
The next time we go and do a stock car thing, well, I want you guys to look at the roll cages and that, all those tubes that are welded together and all that, and realize that some welder was in there doing exactly what we're doing here, making those into one piece. When you look at that, then you start to get an appreciation how much work goes into something like that. You can see just a little fooling around like this is quite a bit of work, right? You guys are ready to hire on as welders.
Does it get more dangerous as you go along?
No. Again, the
Only
better
to your pantyhose.
no, the better
Don't weld in pantyhose.
the better you get at this, the less popping there is, because you don't put your tip in that far. You learn to hold it away a little bit and manipulate the flame a little bit better and control it with the filler rod and everything.
I see.
Again, that's something when you see people first starting, boy, they'll just be popping along and popping along and scaring themselves and pop. But as you get better at it, that reduces sharply.
Apparently, we did things a lot differently 20 years ago. For one thing, we didn't have an announcer, but we do now, and I need to interrupt because we want to acknowledge those who helped digitize and update this classic Motorsports Unlimited episode. Tom McGrady, Art Lauschat, Sue Cassanda, our webmaster Frank Barbalace, Janine Lauschat, and Samantha Bentley. Special thanks to JBTV's Jerry Bryant. Music is created for us by independent artists Roger Polly and Jerry Herbert. Of course, we have to take a moment to thank the stars of this edition of Motorsports Unlimited: Chris Schutz, Angie Kay, Christy Tucker, and our host, Bill Wildt. Me, I'm May Chin, taking just a moment to acknowledge the work of those who participated in the original production crew 20 years ago. Dan Schmidt, Ken Sawinski, Chuck Itzenthaler, Dennis Bohan, and Steve Nelson. Thanks for watching. See you next week.
This program made possible in part by support from Jimmy's Red Hots, located on Grand Avenue and Pulaski Road in Chicago.
This program made possible in part by support from the Chicagoland Toys for Tots Motorcycle Parade held on Western Avenue in Chicago, the first Sunday in December.
This program made possible in part by support from ABC Auto Parts, located on Ashland Avenue at 138th Street in Blue Island, Illinois.
This program made possible in part by support from Bridgestone Firestone and your local Bridgestone Firestone tire retailers.
Motorsports Unlimited is produced by Bill Wildt, president of the Motorsport Advancement Crusade.
This program made possible in part by support from Copy That, located in the County Farm Plaza at County Farm Road and Army Trail Road in Carroll Stream, Illinois. This program made possible in part by support from PB Food Products, located on 47th Street at Western Avenue in Chicago, Illinois.
This program made possible in part by support from J.C. Whitney & Company, located just off I-80 at the Utica exit in LaSalle, Illinois.
Motorsports Unlimited was created to raise public consciousness, understanding, and appreciation of the motorsport community and their activities. You can contact us by email at msutv.com, or you can write to Motorsport, P.O. Box 66242, Chicago, Illinois, 60666. We enjoy hearing from our audience. Please let us know what you think.
And then I'm just going to weld along a little bit, and I'm going to stop and explain a little bit more. I don't know, is that clear to everybody?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Next week on Motorsports Unlimited, we move on to stick welding. It does the same thing as gas welding, except it does it completely differently. Check it out next week on Motorsports Unlimited.
Your plan isn't working very well.
What's the matter?
So that's it, another edition of Motorsports Unlimited and the lovely ladies of motorsports. And be with us next week because we'll have something real exciting. Bill Wildt's going to have the lovely ladies, and just about anything can happen right here on Motorsports Unlimited. Every week at this time, we bring you the best in motorsports. So be seeing ya. Bye-bye. And keep on rocking.